Welcome back to my channel, guys. This is Sindhu. And in today's video, we are going to build a beautiful, modern registration form using React and CSS. But before we jump into the code, let's first see how our final output looks like. When we open the page, the form smoothly slides in with animation. The background has a cool purple-blue gradient, and the form looks like glass with a blur effect. When we click into a field, the label floats up. That's the animated label effect. The border also glows in a nice blue color when focused. The button has a hover effect, and the font is clean and modern using Urbanist from Google Fonts. So that's how our form looks: neat, animated, and professional. Let's jump into the code and understand it step by step. First, we start by importing React at the top with import React from React. This line is important because we are using JSX, and React helps us understand and render that JSX into real HTML on the browser. After that, we import our CSS file using import.app.css. This will apply all the beautiful styles we wrote earlier, like background colors, animations, floating labels, and so on. Now, we define our main component using function app. This is where we return the actual structure of our web page, basically, how our form will look in the browser. Inside the return statement, everything is wrapped inside a div with the class name wrapper. This div centers our form and also triggers the entrance animation that makes it slide in from below when the page loads. Inside this wrapper, we create a form element and give it a class reg card. This card is styled like a glass form, with padding, blur effect, rounded corners, and shadows. It looks modern and clean. At the top of the form, we have an H2 tag with the text Signup. This is the heading of our form. Now come the input fields. Each input is wrapped inside a div with the class input group. This grouping helps apply styles to both the input and its floating label. The first input is for full name, and it uses type is equal to text, which means it will accept normal text. The required attribute means the user must fill it before submitting. Below the input, there's a label tag that says full name. This label floats upward when we click on the input, giving that nice animation. We do the same structure for the next three fields, one for email, and two for password and confirm password. Each of these also has required to ensure the form is filled properly. Finally, we have the register button created using a button tag. This button submits the form. We also gave it some styling so that when the user hovers over it, it gives a slide zoom effect and glows with a nice blue gradient. Let's begin styling our form. The first thing we have is this little block. This is like setting up a clean base for our web page. The star means it applies to everything. Margin, 0, and padding, 0, remove the default spacing that browsers usually add, so everything looks neat. Box sizing, border box, makes sure the size of elements includes padding and borders, so layouts don't break. Font family, Urbanist, sans serif, sets a modern and professional-looking font for the whole page. To use a stylish font in our form, first open your browser and go to fonts.google.com. In the search bar, type Urbanist. It's a modern, clean font that looks really professional. Once you find it, click on it, and Google Fonts will open the font page. Scroll down a bit and you'll see a section called Embed. There, you'll find a line of code that looks like a link. That's the import code. You just copy that link, and then you can paste it at the top of your CSS file like this. So first, the body of the page is styled with a beautiful background. It's not just a flat color, it's a radial gradient. That means it starts with one color in a circular way and blends into others. Here, it starts from the top left corner and smoothly blends from dark blue shades like #0F0C29, #30 to B63, and #24 This gives a night sky or galaxy kind of vibe, really clean and modern. Then, We make sure the body always takes full screen height by using min height, 100 VH. To place the form right at the center of the screen, both horizontally and vertically, we use display, flex, justify content, center, and align items, center. That's why the form floats perfectly in the middle of the page. Now, the dot wrapper is a container around our form. It also uses display, flex to center the form, adds some padding, space inside, and has an animation applied. That animation called fade up gives a nice effect. When the page first loads, the form slides up a bit and fades into view. It makes the appearance look smooth and dynamic instead of just popping in suddenly. Then we have the main box for the form, the dot reg card. This is what makes our form look like a card or glass effect. First, it has a fixed width, 420px, and padding around the content so everything inside doesn't touch the edges. The background color is not fully solid, it's white with transparency, RGBA, to 55, to 55, to 55, 0.05, which mixes with the dark background and creates a glassmorphism effect. To make it more interesting, we apply a blur using backdrop filter, blur, 20px, add rounded corners, a soft border, and a shadow, box shadow, to give it depth, so it looks like it's floating. Also, the text inside is made white using color, white. Inside the form, the H2 title, Signup, is centered with some space below, and it has a slightly larger size and bold look to make it stand out. Next, every input field is placed inside .input group. This is a container that holds both the input and the label together. We make the position relative so that we can place the label exactly where we want on top of the input. This part of the code styles the input box inside .input group. The width, 100%, ensures the input spans the full width of its container. Padding, 14px 12px, gives the text inside some space, making it easier to type. The background, transparent, lets the background show through, while the border, 2px solid #AA, adds a soft gray border. Border radius, 10px, rounds the corners for a smooth look, and color, white, ensures the text is visible on the dark background. The transition, 0.3s, adds a smooth effect when interacting with the input field. This CSS targets the input box when it's clicked or active, focused. The border color, #00f7ff, changes the border to a bright neon blue, so users can easily see which field they're typing in. The box shadow, 008px #00f7ff99, adds a soft glowing effect around the input box, giving it a cool and modern look while also helping it stand out on the screen. This CSS styles the label inside the input field so that it sits on top of the input like a placeholder. Position, absolute, lets us place the label exactly where we want it. Here, it's placed vertically in the middle using top, 50%, and adjusted with transform, translate y, -50%, to be perfectly centered. It's pushed a bit from the left with left, 14px. The label text is light gray, color, #BBB, and has a medium font size of 16px. Pointer events, none, makes sure the label doesn't block mouse clicks, so when you click, it goes to the input box, not the label. And finally, transition, 0.3s allows it to move smoothly when the input is focused or filled. .input group input, focus plus label, .input group input, valid plus label. This means, target the label that comes right after the input if the input is either focused or valid. This makes the label move up and change its look when we interact with the input or type something valid. Top, -10px, this moves the label upward above the input box, so it no longer sits inside it. This makes space for typing. Left, 12px, moves the label slightly from the left, to keep it aligned nicely after it floats up. Font size, 13px, shrinks the label text size when it moves up, like how placeholders become small. Color, #00f7ff, changes the label color to a glowing blue shade, showing it's active. Background color, Hush to 4243E, adds a matching background color behind the label so it blends with the form and avoids overlapping with the input border. Button. This whole block styles the button by default, before hovering. Width, 100%. This makes the button take up the entire width of its container, the form. Padding, 14px. Adds space inside the button to make the text and button size look bigger and comfortable to click. Border, none. Removes the default border around the button that browsers usually add. Border radius, 12px. Makes the corners rounded, smooth edges instead of sharp ones. Background, linear gradient, 135 deg, #00f7ff, #00d4ff. Gives a cool gradient background to the button that goes diagonally, from top left to bottom right, mixing to blue shades. Color, number 000. This sets the button text color to black. Font weight, 600. Makes the button text bold and more readable. Font size, 16px. Sets the size of the text inside the button. Cursor, pointer. When you hover over the button, the mouse cursor changes to a hand icon, showing it's clickable. Transition, 0.3 SEs. Adds a smooth animation effect when the button changes, like on hover. The changes won't happen instantly, they'll happen gradually in 0.3 seconds. This part styles the button when your mouse is hovering over it. Transform, scale, 1.03. Slightly increases the size of the button, like zooming in a little, to give a hover effect and make it feel interactive. Background, linear gradient, 135 deg, #00fff3, #00bcd4. Changes the button's gradient to new colors when hovered, giving it a fresh glowing look. This at keyframes fading up is a CSS animation that creates a smooth entrance effect for elements. It starts with the element being fully invisible and positioned slightly lower than its original spot. This is done by setting the opacity to 0 and moving it down using transform, translate y, 50px. As the animation progresses, it slowly changes the element's opacity from 0 to 1, making it visible, and at the same time, it brings the element back up to its original place by setting transform, translate y, 0. So, in simple words, the element smoothly fades in while moving upward. When you apply this animation to an element like the dot wrapper using animation, fading up 1.2 SEs out, it gives a soft and clean loading effect that feels professional and user-friendly. Thank you. I hope you liked it. This is a simple and beautiful registration form that helps you understand how React and CSS work together to create interactive and attractive web pages. This is perfect for beginners to get started with React development.